it's a truly a deep, both a blessing and a thrill, really, for Lahiri and myself to come back to, as we sometimes like to say, the scene of the crime of 10, 12, 13 years ago when we got to come and help plant those seeds for Swamiji and for all of you. It was really, as I was telling our breakfast mates this morning, our old-time friends from those 13 years ago, it was, those 3 years were probably the most delightful of the 40 years that I've been on this path. During those 40 years have been a lot of different periods. I moved to Ananda village in 1984. I was there at the village proper, serving at the village for 15 years. Lahiri came 3 years later and was there at the village for a full 10 years. Before we both branched out into outreach work to many of the different colonies that Ananda and Swamiji were creating all around the globe. But our foundations were really set. For me, that first year living there with Swamiji, when he would talk on Tuesday evening and on Thursday evening and on Saturday morning and Sunday morning, he would do all of the classes for years. So many of the teachers we know now from video talks that's spreading all around the globe, they were still sitting in the chairs next to me out in the audience. Most of them, other than maybe Jyotish, weren't really talking. Even Devi, we never really heard from back in those years. It was all pretty much Swamiji and a little bit Jyotish, and otherwise the rest of us were just students. We were just soaking up like sponges whatever Swamiji could give us. I remember even Shivaniji, the one who teaches now, a main teacher, and taught many of you Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga and all kinds of the healing things. She was. The first year I was there at Nanda village, she would listen to Swamiji and was furiously writing, sitting on the very back bench of the expanding light temple in those days. And she was writing furiously in a journal or a notebook of hers, because in a few months she was for the first time ever going to be sent out by Swamiji to help plant the seeds of Ananda in Europe. There's an old friend of mine from years and years ago. Hello, Hari. Wonderful to see you. Among those many seeds that got planted, some have grown in many ways over the years. But Shivani was still just a student. We were all learning from Swamiji in those early days. So we had those years at Ananda village. Lahiri had unique experiences around Swamiji, those 10 years that she was there. And then we all got sent out to do the work at various places. In 2001, the two of us got together and started to work together. But again, many places: Sacramento, Rhode Island, Palo Alto, where we're serving currently. But then those years that we were here, were 5 years in Delhi and 3 years here, helping to create what you all now have been building on. For how many years has it been now? It's been 12, 13 years?
14 years.
14 now, yeah. So so many things have taken place, and so many. But there are great books out there. Narayani's book about Swamiji, Asha's wonderful book about all the years with Swamiji. Who else? There's Davidji's biography. She wrote the first one. All of these are from perspectives of individual disciples who talked about, this is what I saw Swamiji do, and this is what he said about why he was doing it. Asha makes that very clear. I can't tell you about the things that he did when other people saw him, because I only witnessed the things that I saw. Well, it's in the same way, we can talk about Swamiji from our perspective of the things that we saw. And I'm going to turn it over now to my wife, who had a unique set of experiences early on, and so we'll kind of give you little stories from various of those times that we were around Swamiji and what we saw. But it's certainly not the complete picture. Even Asha, with that voluminous 700 pages, says, no, this isn't the complete picture. You're going to have to ask Shivani and Kirtani and all these other old-timers for their stories to complete the picture. And some of you have your own stories now that we all are passing on to the next generations that come along. So I'm going to let my wife fill in a few of her remembrances of being around Swamiji and what he was like.
Hello, everyone. Such a lovely setting here. I think India, and somehow from my experience, very, very special in Pune and now in Mumbai. We just got back from there. These small groups of devotees that are now taking the work in their own hands and absorbing the truth through sadhana, through seva, through experiences with one another, through the examples of those you're seeing here, Aditya, Pramala, Blazy, and others. This path of Ananda that Swami felt inspired by his guru, charged by his guru to share broadly and multifacetedly, if that's a word, all the aspects of life, where you can live with uplifted consciousness. You can attain the ultimate freedom. You know, we have a model in Swamiji, a man who finished the very last of his karma in the lifetime that we are reading about, and some of us watched it happen, and became a free soul. And that invitation is out there for all of us, that do it now. Don't wait, just go for the highest, really. So to honor Swamiji, I'm not going to focus so much on the personal relationship that I had, because he was not about that. Anytime we would do that, some of us were more inclined. I have sort of a bhakti nature, and so I would, you know, my heart would rise up at his presence, and in his satsangs and in meditation, sitting in the room with him, I would feel this opening and expanding of my heart, and it would lift me up. And I knew that was love, but then I was, okay, what kind of love is this? It's love of a teacher, it's love of this person, these teachings. What is this? So this was the mystery, you know, and it was a divine love that was coming through. And he trained us all to fill in whatever parts of our discipleship were ours to fill in. Swamiji was so multifaceted. He was a little like a diamond. You look at a diamond and the light reflects, and you see this color here, and you see this color here, and you see the clarity in the middle. Swamiji was that kind of disciple. He had the qualities, and this is where he would like us to focus, really, not about the man, the personality. Gee, wasn't he fun? Wasn't he cheerful? The pictures on the wall show a little bit of his nature, you know, the laughing Buddha pictures, one of my favorite ones, just wide open laugh, full-hearted, full-souled laughter, deep, deep, deep devotion, very incredibly strong willpower. All these aspects. When Swamiji came to Master, we remember, he already had such an intellectual training in his youth. He excelled in argumentation. He said he won every argument at college. He was on the debating team. He was very brilliant in his mind. And he'd already exercised that in that life all the way to that point. So he comes to Yogananda, and Yogananda says, you need to get devotion. So being around these great souls like a Swamiji, you come with your strength, and then he sort of trains you. Well, you need to go a little to the left, a little to the right. And I'll give you illustrative, just so you can, what is it like? See, this is the thing, we always have to caution. It isn't about, gee, I wish I could have been there with Swamiji. And I'm going to finish with a couple of closers that show us Swamiji's still here. We can all still be with him, whether you ever met him in the body or not. So that's the spoiler of the story at the end. So I'll just give a few little snapshots of one little devotee's observations, as it went through time. And so I've told you I have a bhakti nature. Well, I first came to Ananda. I went to Ananda village. It was Spiritual Renewal Week. There were maybe 300-400 people there. I jumped out of the car with my friend who was a Kriyaban, and she was introducing me all around. She was like an older sister to me. And I was sort of blown away by all the joy that I saw in everybody's eyes. Everybody's so happy. How are these people so happy? I tried to be happy, and it came and went, but this was something different kind of happiness. So Swamiji gave the discourse that morning. It was on how to meditate, and he quietly came on the stage, no fanfare, very even-minded, powerful voice, led the group. Some of you haven't had Hong Sa yet, he said, so I will now lead you in the technique. He just went through step by step, very simple, do the Hong Sa technique, and I'm doing the Hong Sa technique. And then an awakening occurs, and I'm no longer the same, and my feet are sort of off the ground, and I walk across the meadow, and I go into the dining room, and there's this huge picture of Yogananda, the last smile. I mean huge, like 6.5 feet tall, just big like that. And as soon as you walked in the dining room, there it was, these eyes, and I didn't know the word at the time, but darshan is what happened through that picture of the last smile, and I knew, okay, this is it. I found my life. Here it is. So I knew by now. I was 30-something, so I'd had a lot of adventure, shall we say, out in the world of maybe I'll find it here, maybe I'll find it there, maybe job, maybe philosophy. Now that's something that might work, take me where I want to go. I know it's bigger than all these other people are saying. Okay, I can't find it there. Maybe I'll find it in human love. Maybe that'll be it, and that wasn't working out so well. And maybe I'll find it in art. Oh, beauty, that's a nice thing. So I'll, oh, well, that didn't quite do it either. So that's where I was when I landed. And then I started hearing about the teachings, and I read the autobiography, and there was a concept in there that really was interesting to me. And I knew that somebody had found the answer. And you can probably guess what the concept was. It was Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And I said, aha, that kind of joy that never goes away, the kind of up that never comes down, the kind of bliss, the kind of expansive love that is one with love in everyone and everything. I read the poem Samadhi, and I was so thrilled to think that a person could experience that. In my little heart of hearts, I knew there must be a bigger love, a bigger joy, but I sort of didn't know it was going to be that big. So with this concept of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I was launched on my new life. Okay, this is the goal. This is what I will find. And I was so thrilled to find my goal. I never really wanted anything. I sort of could see it wasn't going to lead me there, so I never could fully get into it. I always tried it, that's not it. Tried it, that's not it. Tried it, that's not it. So now this is it. I was very, very moved. And I remember walking up to Swamiji at an opportunity in the big dining room, lots of people around, a din of noise. But I saw a moment when he was all by himself, and I came sort of skipping across the floor, and I walked up to him and I said, Swamiji, I'd been writing him. I wasn't a total stranger to him, and he'd been giving me counsel in letters. I said, Swamiji, I know what I want. And he sort of looked at me very calmly. Ah, yes, he said, and what is that? Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I said. And he said, okay, we have to get your feet on the ground.
First things first.
So if we come with our natures, and the Guru gives us the balancing. So what is the balance for the great uplift and inspiring moments we have occasionally in meditation, and the firm affirmation and the belief and the faith and the love of the Guru. It's the day-to-day living, choosing the right consciousness, focusing on the Guru in all the moments, through the sevas that we do, through the devotions, through raising the children, through doing the jobs, through chopping the wood, through carrying the water, through all the things that our life has. That's what the Guru's trying to bring us to. But the promise has always been inspiring to me. So, Aditya was talking about, I've pretty much seen my work as behind the scenes mostly. I've supported some great leaders and been parts of teams that a lot of great things have happened around them and through them, but I haven't felt I had a big role. So when he was listing these, he's very good at CVs, if you notice. I want him to write my resume. If I ever have to get to the pearly gates in heaven, I want to employ Aditya to write my resume, because he makes it sound really, really good. But as I was listening to that, I thought, what it is really is I was just a child, searching for my mother, father, friend, God. I was just a child. And still, I'm just a child. I'm just trying to come back to my Divine Mother, my Heavenly Father. I'm still, we're all children before God. There was a little statue that someone gave Swamiji. You may have heard this story, but it was not that refined. Swamiji's taste was very refined, so if he were to find a statue or anything, it would be the best of that. And this one was just a little simple, kind of roughly hewn thing that someone had given him. And friends wondered, why does Swamiji keep that on his place with all these other refined, beautiful things? And from time to time, he would clean out things. Friends gave him gifts, and he would pass them on to others and kind of open the space for more things to flow. And somebody said, Swamiji, are you ready to, shall we just give this one away? Oh, no, he said. Oh, no, not that one. Oh, why not, Swamiji? It's not one of your nicer ones, Well, he said, because that person saw me the way I am, which is a little boy kneeling before Divine Mother, before God, just a little child. And I love that spirit in India, but especially kind of in southern India. I don't know why, maybe just my experience is limited, but there's that sense of sweetness and openness that's here, that, at the end of our lives, we're reassured and we're told, to get our priorities straight, God doesn't ask you, really, even, plug your ears, Aditya, God does not ask you how many good kriyas did you do. Even that, the highest technique that can happen in this age, that's pretty big, and it is wonderful, one of the greatest blessings. He doesn't ask you, how many hours of seva have you logged in, although it purifies the ego, it helps us not think about ourselves all the time, but think about others, think about something bigger, think about the Guru. Seva's wonderful, purifying. It's a great, non-attachment to the ego is the goal of the path, Swamiji says. So anything that helps us be non-attached to the ego, is our friend spiritually. So Seva's one of those. But that's not what we're asked at the pearly gates before we enter heaven. Are we asked, how many rupees did you give to start a great work? Blessings come. Yogananda said that working industriously, making money for God, for serving his work, is the next best thing to self-realization. That's pretty high. That's wonderful. And any of us who've had a little extra and felt the joy of making something bigger for Master out of, whether it's an altar, flowers on the altar, or funding an orphanage, whatever it is, your level of what God gives you to share is such a freeing and uplifting and joyful thing. But no, No, that's not what God asks you at the pearly gates. Not how many rupees, how many projects did you launch? How many seeds did you sow? You know, he doesn't ask you any of those things. What does he ask you? How much did you love? How much did you love? Oh, it keeps coming back to that, and all the religions of all the world keep coming back to that. How much did you love? You know, how much, and what does that mean? Yes, we love our family. There's a personal thing. We take care of the baby. There's the husband. There's, you know, all these ways that God gives us to love. But the kind of love that the Guru brings is the transcendent love. It's yoga, it's union. It's when your energy, you know, the dualities in the spine become merged, come up, and unite with that expanded consciousness that is accessed through the point between the eyebrows. That's the mystical marriage they talk about in the Christian tradition, where the qualities of male and female, you can even say, I'll make it up as we go along, but I think it'll hold, you know, the bhakti and the jnani and the karma yogi and all the different parts of our nature, the different ways that we try and get closer to God, the different ways we walk the path. When all those come together, when we chant and chant and chant, and then there's the quiet stillness, and we maybe don't have a breath for a while, and we're uplifted, and we're just gazing up, and we feel connection, and we're not there anymore, and there's just the flowing spirit of God and the qualities that come of love and joy and bliss, peace, wisdom, calmness, energy. And the Guru takes each of us and gives us opportunities. I remember, you've probably heard this story, but I can't be here in the land of Jaya. This is part of a Jaya land, you know, Aditya Jaya land and others. When Jaya was coming to India, I believe. No, he was coming to Rhode Island. It was the first time he was coming out of Ananda village to serve the work. And so he was going to be kind of heading up a new little center that was just starting. And so he said, Swamiji, you know, do you have any advice for me? What is it that I should do? You know, he was, you know, a deep, deep yogi. He was, you know, many years of deep meditation, so his way of attuning was there. But, you know, you get a new job and you think, you know, where's the manual? You know, is there something I can do? ABC, where is that? And Swamiji said, well, Jaya, just look for opportunities and act on them. And that was his whole, and I think for a devotee, really, it's look for opportunities and act on them. And what are those opportunities? They come in the sweet ways. Here we are, having a sweet opportunity, being together, remembering in Swami's name the qualities of a true disciple, of a successful disciple who is freed. You know, in this kind of environment, you know, it's easy. This is a wonderful opportunity. And can we then look at the other opportunities and also grow spiritually from them, where the tests are, where the, even Swamiji's life, the persecutions. Every soul has to be persecuted, Yogananda said. So I'm giving you a full range of, you know, we're talking, you know, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and now we're talking, you know, the deepest tests that shake our faith to the roots. You know, but this is the path. And the more we take time to live in the upper realms, we may not hit Sabyakalpa or Nirvikalpa Samadhi in our meditations yet. We might not see the light. We might not hear Om. But some part of God is coming to us in peace, or, again, expanding love, expanding joy, more energy, more calmness. Just spend more time there. and bring that into these places that are challenging and tough, and the tests that come. I remember early on, I had an interesting sort of dharma because I am, just a child, and I came to Ananda, and there were all these great souls all around me. They were older, and they'd been with Swamiji for a long time, and I sort of just showed up on the scene, but he was very patient, and I had renounced the world before I came to Ananda. Goodbye corporate, goodbye success, goodbye relationships, goodbye everything. I'm just gonna help alleviate the suffering in the world was where I was. So should I become a doctor? Should I become a nurse? Should I become a chiropractor? Well, I don't know if I really agree with so many of those things in the system. So I'm just going to become an energy healer, was sort of what I thought. So I found the best kind of class that had not exactly Reiki, but sort of like that, to get a degree so that I could practice, and this was going to be my new life right before Ananda. So instead of that, I had my certificate in my hand, but I landed at Ananda Village and said, this is it, whatever I have to do to be here. But my friend was a chiropractor who took me there. She would adjust Swamiji, so I went with her, and she was very... she was a good one to write your CV, much like Dr. Adichie. She was always, forwarding things, anything. So she was forwarding me. I was in the room meeting Swamiji in his home, meditating just in this wonderful state, this is so wonderful. And she's going, Swamiji, my name Elizabeth, she just finished her massage training. She could rub your feet. And I'm going, well, sure, I'm happy to do that, but I'm so happy right here. I don't need to do anything. And then I could feel Swamiji's energy sort of rotate my way, because he'd been visiting with her. She came regularly up to see him and give his neck adjustment. So his energy sort of rotated to me, and I could sort of feel like a spiritual scan. Like if any of you are Star Trek fans, oftentimes the ship will be scanned, and they will notice, what everybody's doing and what they're thinking, and I could have been concerned about that because, I hadn't certainly lived a perfect life. I'd made a lot of mistakes by then, and some pretty good big ones. You put your energy into something, and you can make a big mistake, but I didn't feel any concern. I was just so uplifted in his presence and so happy just sitting there, little child in bliss, little bliss ninny, as I called myself, and I felt him sort of scan me. It's like, oh, fine, hi, you can see all of me. I don't care. I'm so happy. I don't mind. And he said, no, first he said no, and I thought, oh, that's fine. I just didn't meditate. And then he said, all right, okay, you can rub my feet. So, I started doing the little thing I'd learned to make the foot, the pressure points and all of that, and, just like that. And so that began a service that I was called to do for many years with Swamiji. He had various aches and pains and joints and problems and heart and surgeries and lots of things like that. And we all have, these things that go on as, our bodies aren't meant to last forever in this way. But so I would come, and then I had learned, before I had a guru, I read. I was searching through books, and then I came to Ananda, and I said, oh, this is it. So I read all the books. I had some time. I was kind of trying to move to Ananda, and I had to work and save some money and things. So that's all I was doing. So I would read a lot. So I read all the books, and was so happy to take in the teachings in that way, to spend the time to meditate a little bit, read, is that true? Is that true for me? How can I make that true? Just to absorb as much as I could at that stage, the wisdom that was coming through Yoganandaji's books and Swamiji's books. And so I had that love, and I came to Ananda. And then Swamiji, at one point I was working in the cafe, he said, too bad you couldn't work for Crystal Clarity. He knew the publishing that Swamiji had at the village. And I had that natural love of books, so he knew that, and I loved the teachings. And so I thought, why is it too bad? He knew what to do. He knew how to awaken. So he didn't say, I will give you a job at Crystal Clarity. You know, you love the books. You know, you are so keen on this. Lo, I will just give you. No, not at all, not at all. Too bad you can't work at Crystal Clarity. Why is it too bad? Swamiji thinks it's too bad. It shouldn't be too bad. I should figure out a way to do it. I set my mind, I will do it. There was no opening. There was no budget. There was never a budget. There was no, opening. So I said, okay. My guru says, too bad. He thinks I should do it. I'm going to do it. So I got so determined that sometimes I can be a little overly dramatic. You'll have to excuse me. But I got my courage up. It took me a little while in a seclusion. I quit my job, then I went in another seclusion, and I'm in there saying, I will do this thing, I will. I don't care if I don't eat, I don't care if I have to sleep outside, I don't care, because this is something that I can do to serve my guru, and I see it, and it's right, and I'm going to do it. So I started volunteering at Crystal Clarity, no salary. Thought, well, what can they do? They'll kick me out. I won't pay my rent. Something will happen. I'll figure it out then. I don't care. I was just in that place where I could just totally give myself to God. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. So, well, I did get a job. They did have an opening. Things got bigger. I worked there for a while. So we would come often in the evenings and read what Swamiji had written. And he'd have, a manuscript, latest printout around the room, and people would sit there and he'd want us to comment. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? He wanted us to think for ourselves and not just, oh, Swamiji, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever read, which of course it was. Every single book, every single time was. And reading in his presence also helped uplift the ability to grasp, quite a bit. But he wanted us to engage, to really think about the teachings and what do they mean for me. And he worked, I was going to say tirelessly, but he just, with such high levels of inspiration and willpower, would he work to create a book, to edit a book. I would go over sometimes in the evening, and by now we're realizing that when he would work on a book, his head would get so hot. There would be so much energy up here. And he would sort of like, it was a good idea to just let some of that energy disperse. So he would ask for a head rub. I would give him a head rub. And one time I went, and this is the little snapshot that I've been leading up to with more words than necessary, but the snapshot is he's at his desk working on his computer screen, and he's working on the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And in order to do that, he said he really needed to tune into Yogananda's consciousness very, very directly, and he was. And I walked in the room, and it was like walking into like a little astral bubble of energy, just so bright and sparkly and uplifted. And he was still, deep into some aspect. And so I quietly waited. I sat in a chair and meditated and just sort of felt that energy of him being in that communion with Yogananda and serving him in this way of getting the teachings out, which is what his guru gave him to do. And I was amazed, actually. I don't think I'd ever seen him in that elevated a state. So I was appreciating that, and he said, okay, fine, you can work on my head now. So I went over, and then he just turned around, he looked at me, he said, I think Master's been holding my consciousness in abeyance, because you could feel there was such a thin separation between Swamiji working and, I would use the word infinity. What do I know of infinity? Just little bits of it, but it felt so big in that consciousness that he was. But he had the discipline as a disciple to hold to cooperate. It wasn't that he could really hold it. He kind of, I think, knew that he couldn't hold it from just going out into that bliss and staying there and not working anymore. But he knew his guru was holding it back. And he was willing to cooperate with that discipline to be held to doing the work for another, and that was
35
probably,
years?
some many years through lots of different adventures. But Swamiji, so there was one meditation that we all attended, which is a good story of Swamiji, because these stories they're for all of us. They're, what did Swamiji promise? What does he promise? What does Master promise for us? What are the gifts of the Guru and his disciples? The lineage continues to go forth. It's not stopping with Swamiji leaving the body, and it's not stopping with you, because you're also sharing it with others. Quietly, even, in your family. Doesn't have to be with words. It's through your service, through your vibrations, through your smile, through your love as it expands. So you're all part of this, game plan from Babaji. So, see, where was I?
There was a particular satsang.
Yes, we were in an 8-hour meditation. So I don't know if you have that tradition here in Pune. You do. So, we all look forward to it with a little bit of, trepidation, especially the first ones. But then you realize the blessings last for so long. It's worth it if you have to go through a little bit of tapasya to stay with the day. But an 8-hour meditation, we were in the expanding light temple when it was the little one, not the big one now. And Swamiji was leading us, and we were chanting, and we were tuning into, the energy of the day and going deeper and deeper in meditation. And then suddenly, Swamiji didn't talk through much of those. So if ever he would say a word, almost never. So if ever he would say a word, it was really a big blessing, because he wouldn't interrupt this 8-hour meditation time of silence with just talking about things. We'd play music, there'd be uplifting recordings and things, but he wouldn't just chat with us or do a satsang with us. But he said, now I want you all to listen to me. He said, what I want to tell you today is that all of you should have the goal of becoming a Jivan Mukta in this life. Become free while living in this life. We were a little surprised that he held the goal so high for us. But he does, for all of us. And I am personally encouraged. I like to play games about being encouraged. We are in an ascending yuga. So Swamiji received from Yogananda, we receive from Swamiji, Aditya, those, we keep doing it, but we're also in an uplifting. There's more availability to connect to the light at the center of the galaxy. So maybe, Jivan Mukta is going to be not that long as we thought it might have been in past lives or in past years. Swamiji really saw the highest in us, and he acted that way. I remember one time, how devotees are prone to, the ego is a shifty little devil. It's a shapeshifter. Okay, they figured out that one, I won't use that one anymore, I'll find another one over here. It's like, okay, so we conquer the thing of pride, like I'm a good devotee, I did all these things, we don't have that anymore. And we realized that was easy, obviously that's not right, so I'm not going to do that. But here comes the one of, I'm not a good devotee. I didn't do it right. I didn't do enough kriya. I didn't, if only I could have, and why didn't I? And, and then so the little shapeshifter ego kind of, that's an easier one for the ego to get into for us. So, so I was having one of those moments in the presence of Swamiji. He was, exalted, but he was just our friend. He was like, just living with us. He wasn't, a guy, he never wanted to have anything like the image of holding an umbrella over his head, and walking along and throwing lotus petals at his feet. It's like, he wasn't into what he called the guru game that some people in the West got into. It's not about that. It's about being just a simple, unassuming friend. That was his way of working with all of us, and the way he taught all of us, and Jaya and Jitja and everybody to work with. Just be your spiritual friend, divine friendship that we give one another. And it's one of the reasons that having satsang and community, wherever it is, if it's online, pardon me, online, I'm not used to looking at you out there, but I know you're there. That sense of community, so we remind each other. We're constantly reminding each other because it's necessary. But yeah, so I was walking with Swamiji one day. This is just another of the little snapshots, things to avoid on the spiritual path.
Not avoid walking with Swami.
Not avoid walking with Swamiji. Definitely walk with Swamiji all the time. The blessing of having Swamiji not in the body. Now those of us who grew up, having him around in the body, I always knew it was going to be an adjustment, but he won't be here, says the mind. He isn't here. He'll go away. Early on I recognized this is a little attachment. You're going to suffer if you keep this one, because he's not going to be in the body forever. And and so you try and prepare yourself. And I was so happy when he got to leave the body, certainly after all that tapasya that he had to do, and the freedom that his soul was able to have when he left the body. I was all for that, 100%. But yeah, a little bit of, I kind of miss seeing him. But more and more we're finding devotees saying, he's coming to me in a dream. I never met him, but he came to me in a dream. Or I did meet him and he's not in the body, but I feel his presence. And I'll tell one story, and I think that'll be the end maybe for today. It's probably getting late. But anyway, this is a good one, which is a snapshot of a little bit fast forward, right on the edge. So the movie Finding Happiness happened, and it was one of the last things that Swamiji got to see done, and he was so happy to see that movie about building spiritual community and the success of it. It shows Ananda village, many of you know it, and the devotees at the village and the consciousness in their eyes. And it's a beautiful story, and his guru had given him that work. So here was, wow, a movie that other people could watch about this. Of course, coming to Ananda village, any of you that ever get the chance, definitely do it. And this movie gives it more available for many more people. So we were playing this movie in the Ananda Palo Alto temple. And it was, just came out before he left the body. Excuse me. And so there were ads and things to promote the movie. And we had one Spanish young lady whose parents, very refined, lovely people who were devotees of Christ. They had lived their life praying and attuning to that master. So they were not beginning on the spiritual path, but they knew nothing of our path. Their daughter was into it, and they were visiting her from Spain. So the mother had seen a flyer. This movie's coming. I must see this movie. Look at this face of this man. I must see this movie. So she came to the temple for the showing of the movie. And she saw Swamiji's face in the movie, and she felt an instant connection with her heart. Just her devotion, her practices of devotion just allowed her to just completely connect with him in that movie. And she came the next day or a few days later, and she said, when can I meet that man in the movie? I must meet this Swami Kriyananda. When can I meet him? She didn't have much English. Her daughter was translating. And we had to tell her, well, Swamiji just left the body. She was bereft. She just, oh no, this one chance I had to meet this great saint, this great soul, and now I won't be able to meet him. And I came so close, that sense of, almost got to meet him within days. You can imagine, I wanted that, didn't get that. So this mom, the Spanish lady, was also in Palo Alto to go to Stanford Hospital because she'd been having recurring lesions in her abdomen, and she'd had now I think she'd had at that point 4 surgeries because the pain would become so intense they'd go in and clean out and cut up and all of that. So she was very even-minded, and she was a prayerful, dutiful. She knew life had some suffering and you give it to God, and she was pretty advanced actually, as a general spiritual person on the path. So she had done that attitude, but now she was going for her 5th time to get lesions removed. She was in her probably mid-60s, early 70s. And she just started praying. She said, God, please, I don't want to have this surgery. Another one, the same thing I keep having to do. Please, God. So she started praying. But, she was doing what the needful was. The doctor said, come to the hospital. We schedule you for the surgery room. Okay, fine. She came to the hospital. She was in the hallway on the gurney, those things they roll you into. And for some reason, there was a little traffic jam in the surgery ward that day, and things took a little longer, so she was waiting in the hall. And while she's waiting, she's thinking, here's my last chance. I don't want to have this surgery, God. Please, 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 with her full-hearted devotion, please, don't make me have this surgery again. And she said, I prayed so deeply, and then I happened to just glance up. As I glanced up, I saw Swamiji, and it was like he was really there. She said, and he looked into my eyes, and I looked into his eyes. And she said, and something happened. She said, I thought at the time I'm changed, and I think I'm healed. But that's a lot to assume. But she said she felt it was true, and it was such a deep feeling. She was able, this is Western medicine, Stanford University, they don't really go for this much. Or at least they didn't. I won't call that for all of them. It's not their leading edge, shall we say, to have miraculous healings in the hallway of the surgery ward. But she was able to convince them that something had happened, and she insisted. She got another x-ray. The doctor said, you don't have them. We don't need the surgery. Let's cancel the surgery. So Swamiji is still very much around, shall we say. And for the people who had never met him, actually, I've learned they had a little bit of an advantage because they never met him. So they weren't thinking, what have I lost? If they cannot think, what have I lost? I used to have it and I don't have it. They just think, how can I have it now? What ways can I have it now? And the ways to have it now, this is the good news. Once Swamiji left his body, his consciousness and freedom were much more expanded. He was no longer focused on being in a place at a time. He's now anywhere we call on him, anywhere to those who think me near, I will be near, Yogananda said. And that's also true for Swamiji. And Swamiji, for many of us, those of you sitting in this room, he's a direct conduit that Master sent us to get closer to God, to get closer to Yogananda, to get closer to God. Swami Kriyananda would always say, don't stop here, meaning at this form of Kriyananda, this personality, this even pattern of energy, expanded and powerful as it was. Don't stop here. Go all the way to God. And that's the same thing Yogananda, all the masters say. You come to me, I take you. You're my children. I'll love you in the ways that I do. I'll give you my techniques. I'll give you my guidance. I'll give you my presence. I'll love you. I'll be there for you. I'll comfort you. I'll counsel you. I will be there. I am always there for you. If you think me near, I will be near. And so I just encourage you, the more and more you learn about Swami Kriyananda, he had a big work to do for his guru, and he still is doing it. He was asked, Swamiji, when you leave in this life, Asha asked him this. She would often ask him these tough questions that no one else would ask. Asha, pray for Asha. Asha Nayaswami. Swamiji, when you're free, Master said you'd be free at the end of this lifetime. When you're free, do you think you'll ever come back again? And, you know, life is not so easy for any of us. For a great spiritual soul such as Swamiji, who took on much of the work that his, guru, he took on all the work that his guru wanted him to do, which is pretty big mission, books, people, a lot of people, a lot of tapasya. Just took it on. At one point, I remember he was being sued and people were persecuting him personally. They were trying to make it a big mess in the newspapers and bad lawyers and all of that. And he said, well, you've just got to take it in the chin. Just keep your head up. Persecution comes, how do you respond? It's not that it's not going to come, but it's how do you respond? And how does a devotee, how does a disciple of Yogananda respond? Take it in the chin. Just take it in the chin and keep going forward.
And the story about coming out of the courtroom after the
Oh, yeah. This is a fun little snapshot of Swamiji. So here it is. It's about one of the lowest points of that long lawsuit that lasted 12 years, trying to take away the ability to share Yogananda. Then they didn't get there, so then they tried persecuting Swamiji by saying all these horrible things that weren't true about him. Took him to court. These lawyers that he humorously, throughout the whole thing, he always had a sense of humor. So he came home after we'd met these lawyers who actually were specialists in cult busting. So they had, this whole game plan about how to basically just bring him down. And they executed it and put all the prayers that we said at Ananda on the wall and tried to have the jury see how ridiculous they were. How could people possibly say these things? And these are our sacred prayers, it was that kind of a scenario you can imagine. So they're in there with Swamiji. They're berating him, saying all these untruths. He'd been given basically a gag order. He couldn't defend himself, so he held that discipline with dignity, allowed them to say whatever they said, held his calmness and even-mindedness. But he had a very difficult heart situation going on. So we were concerned about him, and many of us were lined up in the hallway of the courtroom, waiting our turn to go in so they could, thrash us around a little bit to their best of their ability. And we were worried, so we weren't able to be in the courtroom. So there was this little window, just about this big, wooden doors. And the other side, it reminded me of the Colosseum, where the
Roman Colosseum.
The Romans are, and the lions are there, and, all we could do is look through this little window, like kind of a nightmare. But Swamiji was looking fine, his heart was holding, he was okay, but we knew it was going to be a strain on him, a big thing to take. So the doors opened, and all of us circled around him like, Swamiji, how are you? Are you okay? We were so concerned. We were being better devotees than just to wring our hands and gnash our teeth. We went off in a side room and we were doing affirmations for psychological success. Devi was leaving us, and everybody was reading their mystery books to try and keep their minds at least neutral, not to worry and not to be in negativity. So there were mystery book. And I came and I knew I needed more help. I was going to testify, so I took the essence. I had my little baby Bhagavad Gita book, the new one, the bigger one from Yogananda's teachings hadn't come out. So I had Sir Edwin Arnold's little blue book. So I'm clutching this little blue book and I'm opening it and I'm reading, okay, here's something I can get away from my ocean of suffering. Yeah, I think I'll do that. I think it's a good time for that, okay. I will be with you always. Yeah, that's a really good time, I will, I tell thee for thy comfort this, cling to me. Yes, yes, yes. You know, I will set you free. I will, you know, you will come to me. And I'm just like, you know, drinking this in as if, you know, desperately. And Devi comes walking by. She looked around, mystery book, mystery book, mystery book, Bhagavad Gita. She said, I can tell you, in that book, God is the doer. So into this scene, you know, we always have fun wherever we go. You have to have a little humor. So Swamiji walks out. Not long after that, we've been praying, chanting, Gita-ing, you know, whatever we've been doing. And then we surround him. Swamiji, so how was it? How did it go? Are you okay? Well, yes, he says, I am stirred, not shaken, which is a line from...
shaken, but not stirred. Martini.
Martini.
Except
He
he
said
changed
the other
it.
way.
He changed it.
He did.
He changed it, yeah.
Oh.
It's a famous
Stirred.
line that he flipped on its head.
Yeah, stirred, not shaken. You know, there's a certain martinis where they didn't want you to shake them because they said you would bruise the gin. And this was from P.G. Woodhouse's kind of world, I
Actually,
believe. James Bond?
James Bond.
Swamiji also really loved James Bond. You know, and I used to wonder, why would Swamiji like James Bond? I mean, I like James Bond, but I thought that I'll leave that in my past because now I'm a devotee. You know, I don't think about those things, right? But I thought, now why? Well, of course, especially, well, Sean Connery. We all have our favorites, but you know, that even-mindedness. There it is, the bombs, the crashing, the villains, you know, whatever's happening is happening, but stirred, not shaken. That's how I like my martinis, as people are shooting at him, you know, whatever's going on. And Swamiji just came out, and that was his response. And we all just, of course, broke out laughing. You know, the comic relief of the whole play of the day was very dear.
And now it's time for your last.
And now it's time for my last.
Finish it.
No, but sorry, if I may. You mentioned Ashaji asked him, sir, will you come back?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Oh,
That is an
finished
important
that.
thread because, yes, we're all on tenterhoofs on that one. So for years he would say, you know, I don't think so. It's like, you know, by the time he was looking forward to freedom in a big way. And, you know, the dregs of karma were being played out, and the karma for, no doubt, you know, you have to free 6 souls before you yourself are free, is the karmic law, the spiritual law. So, you know, he was burning off karma for whatever karma he had left to do for disciples, whatever it was, his own remaining. So those years were not so easy. So one could see why, you know, the exit. I remember the devotee stories. Ananda had to testify in the courtroom. And it was not going to be easy. They had letters from people who'd said things. And anyway, it was tangled, and so she had to sit through that. So she said the way she got through when they were harassing her and, you know, in the lion's den there, she said, I kept looking up at the back of the room, and there was a sign in big, bright green letters that said, exit. And I kept thinking, I'm taking this karma. This is hard. But you know what? I'm going to exit. I'm going to be free. I'm going to get through this, you know. And anyway, so Swamiji said, for a long time, I don't think I'll come back. But then in the last period, last year, 2 or 3, I don't know the exact timing, he said, you know, I used to think I wouldn't come back. He said, but I know myself, you know, and all of you, you know, in his last talk, I look at this from time to time just to remind me of, you know, that deep connection we have with Swamiji. It's on YouTube, his last Easter talk, his last satsang in Assisi, the letter that he wrote. And he has it read in its entirety there. And it's incredibly beautiful. And what he said at that time, which was 1 week before he died, 10 days, something like that, a week and a half before he left the body, what he says in there is, you know, I'm finished. I don't mind. I'm really happy to go anytime. I'll stay if my Guru wants me. I'm, paraphrasing a lot of it. But, this world means nothing to me. It's all ashes, My successes, they mean nothing. Nothing. None of it means anything. I'm sort of finished, it's kind of the feeling you got from him. And many people interpreted that letter as, oh my goodness, Swamiji's having such a hard time, we must help him. But he was just in extreme vairagya, just withdrawing, nothing matters. He said, but the one regret I have is that I wish I could take all of you with me. I think by then he knew where he was going. When he reached the pearly gates, did you love your Guru? Did you love for your Guru? Did you love others in his name? Did you serve him? Any little check boxes we can imagine, Swamiji could check them all off. So he was obviously going to be greeted and welcomed with great love by his Guru. But he said, I wish I could take all of you with me. So then he said to Asha, I know myself. And, I'll come back for you. I'll come back for you. So what I look at that, I'll finish one other thread, which was walking along with Swamiji and the ego finding its little way to play in, thinking I was being humble, when in fact my ego was gnawing away at me feeling not worthy. So I said, oh Swamiji, I feel so sorry for you that you're stuck with me. Because at some point, he said something, well, what did he say? He said, well, I'm pulling up stakes in this world, because I came to him, he wasn't a super young man, I wasn't the first or even the first and a half generation, I was the second and a half, somewhere in their generation. He said, I'm pulling up stakes in this world. I said, oh yes, Swamiji, I know, I want to be one of those stakes. So I was a little bit, I don't know. He was stuck with me, I'll say. And, he once said, you're mine. He once said that. He didn't say much of those kinds of things, but once he did say, I felt it. He was my Guru, and he said, no, God's the Guru, Yogananda's the Guru, but I felt, this connection with him, so that he was going to take me there. So, so maybe that's it?
Can you bring the arrow?
So, no, I'll do this. He said, when I said, you're stuck with me, I'm sorry for you that you're stuck with me, he said, don't ever say that. Because he didn't want us to think we were small. He saw us as being free souls in the making, and that is how he sees us all. So let him see you that way. The Guru is the flawless mirror. You look at him and you see yourself as your highest. So when you look at Swamiji or think of Swamiji, know that he's seeing you as your highest. And when you look at him, we can catch glimpses and we can see ourselves in our highest. And that's who we really are.
Let's get these thoughts, these stories, firmly embedded in our consciousness with this last chant. I will be thine always, my Lord, I will be thine always. I may go far, farther than the stars. I may go far, farther than the stars, but I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. Devotees may come, devotees may go, Devotees may come, devotees may go, but I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. When I die, look into mine eyes. When I die, look into mine eyes. They will mutely say, I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. I may go far, farther than the stars. I may go far, farther than the stars, but I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. Devotees may come, devotees may go. Devotees may come, devotees may go, but I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. When I die, look into mine eyes. When I die, look into mine eyes. They will mutely say, I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. My Lord, my Lord, I will be thine always. Hari Om.